Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here this Monday. Monday, the 13th of May, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. You guys really like it to see, if you're watching my show and nobody else is talking about something, and I give you the information first and I tell you about it, and then later it happens. In other words, I'm ahead of everybody else on the story, mostly, for the most part. There's a big story unfolding here with the Fed and what's going to happen to the United States economy in the next few months and how it ties into the election. Now, I'm going to get into this and I'm going to talk about it later on the show, but first we're going to run over some of the news stories. We're going to get started and we're going to take a look at what's going on. We just had this massive solar storm hit the earth for about 2 or 3 days. There's a lot of people got some really nice pictures of the aurora borealis like they've never seen it before. Some people have seen it in places where they didn't normally see it. But why didn't it cause a power outage and internet down kind of an event? I got a few theories I'm working on, maybe why it didn't cause that. But those are just my theories as to why maybe it didn't cause a full-scale power outage event. But let's just put it this way. If we get a strong enough pulse from the sun aimed directly at the earth, I think it's going to shut down the internet if we get a strong enough pulse. Evidently, this pulse that just hit probably didn't have quite the intensity it needed to cause these kind of effects where it shuts down the internet and shuts down the power grid. But they're saying we're going to get more. It says the northern lights that appeared over UK skies over the weekend are likely to be the last to occur in 2024, according to solar physicists. Unlikely to be the last. In other words, there's going to be more because we're in this period where this rare phenomena is occurring on the sun. And it's going to take more pot shots at us. Basically, it exactly works like that. It works like a pot shot. It works like somebody, it's like it's firing these things at us. The sun rotates around until the thing's aimed at the earth, the spot, and then it blows off this geomagnetic flare and it shoots out through space like a bullet at the earth and hits the earth. It hits the side of the earth aimed toward it. We're going to get more. And so we're being pot shot at, and it's just a matter if we get a direct hit or not. It could deal a fatal, one of these geomagnetic storms can deal a fatal blow to the earth. It could. It has the potential to do that. And we're in that zone right now where this 11-year activity cycle is reaching its peak between 2024 and 2025. Now, Trump has promised the oil CEOs to steer $1 billion toward his campaign. And what are they going to get from that? He's going to scrap all these policies of electric vehicles, wind energy, as well as other initiatives that are opposed to the fossil fuel industry. So, the fossil fuel industry is saying to themselves, hey, is this a good deal? If we give him $1 billion, and perhaps we will get to have everything our way. And so the continuation of the use of oil. It says Donald Trump sat with some of the country's top oil executives at his Mar-a-Lago club last month. It says one executive complained about how they are continuing to face burdensome environmental regulations despite spending some $400 million to lobby the Biden administration in the last year. Trump responded. His response, it stunned several of the executives in the room. He said, "You are all wealthy enough," he said. "You should raise $1 billion and return me to the White House, and he vowed to immediately reverse dozens of Presidential Biden's environmental rules and policies and to stop new ones from being enacted. Now this is unprecedented what's going on right here. Egypt is going to join the International Court of Justice. It's their case against Israel. Egypt is joining. It says, in an unbelievable diplomatic blow to Israel, Egypt said it will join South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. Analysts say it's a big deal. And yeah, it is, because Egypt's right next door. They're just on the other side of Gaza. There. Right there. And it's very complicated, the inner workings of the relationships between the countries in the Middle East. And so, yeah, I believe this is very unprecedented. The United States Senator, looks like Lindsey Graham, United States Senator calls on Israel to nuke Gaza. He says the United States made the right call against Japan. Do you realize that if that were to happen, let's just for sake of argument, say that the United States dropped some nukes on Gaza. Gaza's right next door to Israel. There would be tremendous fallout. And I'm talking fallout as in radiation that would rain down on Israel. Because it's so close in proximity. Radiation goes 70, 80 miles away from I'm talking about deadly radiation from a nuclear strike. That radiation could blow over Egypt. How would that affect relations? Deadly radiation falls over Egypt because Gaza is in close proximity. Have they thought of that? Just saying. Now, looking at the war in Ukraine right now, an apartment block has collapsed in a Russian border city after heavy shelling. So we got a whole apartment block collapsed, and there's an awful lot of dead. It says officials blamed Ukrainian shelling on the building's destruction. Heavy shelling killed at least two, but there's probably more dead. They got a lot of rubble to sift through there, and they'll probably find dead bodies in the rubble. Crying shame. People sleeping in the early morning hours or whatever, and then there's a loud boom. Whew. War is hell. War is an awful thing. Now I'm going to get into it. I'm going to talk about what's coming, and I'm ahead of it by probably, I don't know, I'm going to guess I'm ahead of it by 4 months. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's saying anything about it, but it's happening right now in real time. What is it? It's got to do with what the Fed did. I saw this thing on, I got a real chuckle on it. I was watching the TikToks, or whatever. It's like a 2-minute video. And it was talking about editables. And I got to laugh at it. I thought it was funny. The guy says, stage one, you go out and buy an edible and you eat it. Nothing happens. Wait 30 minutes. Wait an hour. Nothing happens. They think they're gypped. They think, these that didn't work. I got it, and maybe the guy cheated me. They don't work, So waited about half an hour more, and then eat more because they don't work, and then wait a half an hour or an hour longer, and call the emergency room. So the way they did it, though, I mean, it wasn't real funny the way I said it, but the way they did it on the show thing there I got a real chuckle out of it. I thought it was really funny because they were talking about the delayed effect or delayed reaction. This is what's going to happen exactly with the Fed. They did all this rate hiking and nothing happened. And so now they're thinking more, or thinking, okay, higher for longer right now. And it's just like the person that's taking edibles saying, well, nothing happened. I ate that. Nothing happened. And an hour's gone by and nothing's happened. I'll eat more. And then, boom, about an hour later, boom, delayed reaction hits. And then they're in misery. They think they're dying or whatever. Call the emergency room. Well, this is the same thing with the Fed. It's exactly the same thing. Right now, they're in that stage, I'll eat more. Or in other words, higher for longer. Yeah, boy, put it to her. The economy's okay. Nothing's happening. Okay? It's getting ready to happen. It's getting ready to happen. Right now. What's getting ready to happen is things aren't selling. Big ticket items. You go into a store where they sell appliances, or you go into a place where they sell new cars and stuff like that. All those new trucks out there are $60,000, $68,000 just sitting there. The buyers are, on the bigger ticket items, are already starting to flee. But it's going to start to extend down into lesser and lesser ticket items. What that creates is when they're not selling like that, and the reason why they're not selling is this system runs on debt. The extension of new debt has to continuously keep coming to keep the system running. These high interest rates, the banks right now, which aren't making any money and are not extending loans like they should be, there's a delayed reaction when that money pool starts to dry up suddenly in the system, and people start to pull in, not buy stuff. What that leads to is then other people that make that stuff that they were going to buy but they didn't buy suddenly start getting laid off, and then they can't buy stuff. And what happens is it takes a few months for this to settle in. But when it starts to settle in, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's hard to turn it around and get it to go the other way. It starts to deflate. The system starts to... It's just the same thing as if you had a balloon, you're letting the air out of the balloon. For the first few seconds, you might not notice anything, but the air's leaking out. You let it leak out long enough, and then you start to really notice at a certain point. But then it's hard to stop and turn this thing around the other way once it starts to all deflate. Once the whole system starts to deflate, then how do you turn it around? Well, the Fed will. They're going to. At a certain point. When they start to see what I'm talking about right now, when it starts to occur really bad in a few months from now, that's when it's going to start to manifest itself. They're going to have to turn it around. And they'll have to lower interest rates in order to do so. When they lower interest rates, they're going to send a signal to the market, an enormous signal to the market that they're out of control on all of this. I'm expecting it could have a very negative effect to the markets initially. But then when they start pouring the money into the system, the markets start to drop initially. They start to pour money into the system, and then at a certain point, the markets will start to turn around the other way. Then watch out. That's when the real big inflation's going to start to come. And the system's going to start to implode upon itself. It just can't take this rattling back and forth between boom and bust to such an extent that it's going to start to go into. It's basically an awful lot of things are like that, They'll start to shake and before they blow up. You go inside the house, and you hired a cheap plumber. He wasn't worth his money. And so he worked on your hot water heater on the weekend. And the TP valve, the temperature pressure valve, you know, he didn't have one in the truck or whatever. He didn't want to run to town, so he just blocked it off with a cap. You know? So you come in the house that afternoon, and your hot water heater, you hear a bang, 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 bang. You go into the back end of the bathroom, into the closet or whatever, where the hot water heater is. You open up the door, and the hot water heater's just in there shaking back and forth on the thing. You better run. Because he capped off the TP valve. She's going to blow. But she'll shake first. That's the way a system's going to do. When the system's getting ready to blow up, it's going to start to shake at a certain point. Back and forth between this shaking is in a cycle, probably, I don't know, a 6 month or a year cycle, where, because the system is so large, where it's going to start to shake back and forth between inflation and deflation. But ultimately, inflation's going to win because policy-wise, they have to continue to inject liquidity into the system. And it's going to take copious amounts of liquidity. When we get this little downturn that's going to occur, it's going to take copious amounts of liquidity in order to shock the system and bring it back up. And it's going to create a boom cycle. There's always a delayed reaction in all this, too. So here's where it's going. We're headed from the actions of the Fed and raising interest rates and everything the way they did. We didn't experience the problem right away, but we're going to experience the deflationary bust cycle. It's right directly ahead, and then they're going to try to fix it, and they're going to overcook it like they overcook everything they do, and then they're going to hurl us in the opposite direction into a boom cycle. So we're in for a bust cycle, and then we're in for a boom cycle. But the boom cycle is going to come with tremendous inflation, and it's going to start the beginning of the end of this system of monetary system. This is the conclusion of this monetary system. The dollar's going to go bust, and all the other Western fiat currency is going to go bust with it. And this is going to be like nothing you've ever seen before. And everything's focusing on this election period. It's all coming down. It's all coming due. And we got an election that's just, the whole thing is I've never seen anything like this before. Where the sides have been drawn to such an extent in the United States where there's no bipartisan support at all. There's like both sides are distinctly drawn lines against each other without any bipartisan support. All my life growing up, you know, I mean, I lived in the United States for like 26 years, and there was a cohesion in government, you know, and it's like it's just getting worse and worse. That cohesion is starting to disappear, where there's no cohesion whatsoever. There's just two sides against one another, bitter rivalry. You know, there's a saying that's coming to mind. It says, a house divided against itself will not stand. Let's take a look at the silver price today. $28.29. It's up 17 cents on the day so far. Gold and silver are signaling this, but I think they're a little bit muted because they realize that we are going into a bust cycle directly ahead that's going to trigger the Fed into action on the other side of this bust cycle. You know, this bust cycle started as soon as they started raising rates, but it's this delayed reaction. It's going to really hit just ahead, and then it's going to turn around, but there's a delayed reaction on it turning around. And this is why they always overcook it, because during that delayed reaction, when they're trying to turn it around, it's sinking, still sinking, and they restart to try to pump money into it, but it still sinks for a little while. they panic and they pump even more into it as it starts to sink. And then we get the boom cycle on the other side of that. It's going to make a repeating pattern in the stock market that looks exactly like what happened at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. It's going to make that same repeated pattern again, a fall off. A lot of people are going to get rich because if they buy at the bottom of that fall off, when the market goes back into a bull cycle after it's over, you just got to look at that repeating pattern of what happened at the beginning of the COVID thing and how the people that bought into the market at the bottom of that fall, when they come out with the CARES package and all those stimulus packages, what did the market do? This is going to be bigger. And so you're going to see a lot of people make an awful lot of money in the market coming up in a little while. Not on this cycle that we're in right now, though. This cycle that we're in right now is not it. It's going to be, it's soon. It's directly ahead in our future, what I'm talking about. So silver's at 28.12. Taking a look at gold today is 23.43. Cryptocurrency today is 62,970 for Bitcoin. Ethereum is at 29.58, and we're looking at XRP at 50 cents. It's always 50 cents. Dow Jones Industrial Average today is up 48 points at 39,561 for the Dow. Taking a look at our crude oil is at 79.27. It's up $1.01 on the day. Now our bonds and rates today, we're looking at down a couple basis points. So the 10-year has fell 1.9 basis points, and it's at 4.48. And the U.S. 30-year is at 4.62, and it's down 1.7 basis points. And finishing off with the dollar index at 105.19 and falling today. It's just started a little bit of a turnaround in the last few minutes there. So, thank you guys for listening to the show. And you guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.